There's also a lawsuit going on against the FDA for encroaching upon our First Amendment rights. So,
well, I'm not a fan of the FDA. Let me put it
good.
that way.
That's very good.
You know, have you ever heard of Underwriter Laboratories? You know, they're a much better organization. They're private. They do a really good job. You could do the same thing, abolish the FDA and have it done privately, and everyone would be better off except the people that work for the FDA.
Of course. It's a pharmaceutical monopoly. What that is.
It's huge. Well, it's huge. And by the way, it takes the pharmaceutical companies just extra hundreds of millions of dollars to get any new pharmaceutical through the FDA. And as a result, you know, the drugs that would marginally help our lives but aren't going to be big sellers never see the light of day.
Right.
It just, the system does not work. We need to bring the private sector back into that, as well as the civil justice system. The FDA is working against us.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of good people that get threatened by the FDA every day for stating,
no kidding.
For just stating facts about their products. It's crazy.
Oh, that's right. I mean, all of this stuff. I mean, do we need a Bureau of Land Management?
Right.
Ask the American Indians, the Native Americans. Hey, has the Bureau of Indian Affairs helped you? I mean, all of this stuff. It's just, in fact, Henry Ford, not my favorite person in the world socially, but came out with a sentence that everybody should focus on, and that is anyone that feels that you can progress and be successful by being reliant on the government should talk to the American Indian. I mean, that says it all. And people need to look at that because the reliance upon the government has been a death trap for Native Americans and for people on wealth, you know, all that sort of stuff. On the one hand, yes, I care about people. I was in the Peace Corps. I want to make sure that people are able to have equal opportunities, and nobody's going to starve to death on my watch, and nobody's going to bleed in the streets to death. And that's, you know, we're going to provide the safety net for our people. But otherwise, this whole dependency stuff, this entitlement stuff, this victimization stuff, not only, it doesn't work. For the people that are in that position, you are really hurting yourselves and your children forever. It doesn't work. Knock it off and come in here, and you can thrive by taking responsibility for yourself and your family members. That's the deal.
That is the truth.
So government should be the last resort instead of the first resort, and that's my rallying cry, and I believe it. No, nobody's going to starve to death on my watch, and same with Governor Johnson. No, Governor Johnson, when he was governor of New Mexico, as best we can determine, vetoed more excessive spending measures than all other 49 governors combined. And as he says with a chuckle, when he was doing this, he left the state with $1 billion surplus. And when he was doing this, people were forecasting, oh, you're going to have riots in the streets, you're going to have babies starving. None of that happened. Of course not. But we've got all of this extra spending for all of this pork with all of these various pet projects so that I can help you because you're my constituent, so you'll vote for me. Nonsense. So, you know, he's the right guy. I can't overemphasize. For some reason, this man has it all, and he's just the right guy. He has a sense of humor. He is doing the right thing for the right reason. First I ever heard of him, never heard of him before. 1999, as a governor of New Mexico, he comes out in favor of a change of drug policy. He said, I've conducted my own audit. The nation's drug policy is not working, and we have to change it. No political constituency, no benefit for doing it. It's the right thing. Now, you can agree with it or disagree with it, although more and more people are seeing that he's right. But at least he has the courage to stand up and to say, this is wrong, we're going to fix it. Don't you want somebody like that as President of the United States with regard to all of these other areas where we're suffering, where we're not doing health care and education, you know, all these things, immigration again. It's just he's the right guy.
It would be a dream come true if he got elected.
Well, nobody's perfect, and it's a big system, and it takes a long time to change a aircraft carrier, you know, in this direction. It takes miles and miles, so don't expect miracles immediately. Having said that, you're going to see miracles immediately.
I hope so. That's great. That is perfect right there. I like that. That's awesome. I hope so. We need hope right now. We need to be high on opium.
Oh, no. Come on. Yes, there are lots of bad things happening in the world, no doubt about it. But something else? There's a lot of good things happening, too. And we need to focus on that as well. And Governor Johnson, he's going to bring us honest hope. Honest hope. These things are going to work, and people are going to rally to this, and we're going to go public. We're going to appoint neutral, non-political commissions to look into education, to look into health care. We cannot simply stand up and say we oppose and want to repeal Obamacare. We'll lose, and we probably should lose. You've got to replace it with something. You've got to show folks that you care about them. I do not want someone to go without health care regardless of their economic position. We can afford it. I was blessed to be able to be born to parents that cared and were upper middle class, and that gives me an obligation. I'm still kind of in the Peace Corps. It gives me an obligation to help those who didn't have such a benefit that I did. But again, government will be the last resort. If you get government out of health care, then the whole system will start working better with competition, ingenuity. With creativity, bring it back and get the government out of it. Put it this way. Today there are two areas of medicine where you, I, or anyone else can get good quality medicine for reasonable competitive prices. What are they? Well, number one, it's eye LASIK surgery. Number two, it's cosmetic surgery. Why? Because the government's not involved. So you can come to Dr. Gray. You've heard these advertisements. I've done this LASIK surgery 20,000 times, and I'll give you competitive prices. I'll give you a whole payment schedule, all that sort of stuff. We'll do that for kidney transplants, too. I'm older than you. I don't know you guys, but I'm older than you are. I was raised in the 50s and 60s, and it was not even a topic of conversation that we cannot find reasonable health care for reasonable prices. Just wasn't even discussed. Not an issue. We had all the emergency rooms in the world. Then the government starts getting involved, and what happens? It starts getting worse. Okay, so the government gets more involved because it isn't working. Now look at this system. We're trying to make your local Department of Motor Vehicles in charge of your health care. It doesn't work. Get it out of there, and the system will work again.
They're holding back the advances, too. I mean, if you were to actually encourage and stop suppressing all the advances and get rid of the FDA,
sure they are.
I suspect health insurance would be 100th of what it costs today.
Sure.
I mean, that might sound like an exaggeration, but it's probably not too far off.
Oh, probably 10 times. Let's not exaggerate.
Okay.
Yes.
At least.
And that's simply a flat-out fact. That's right. The government is not good at this, nor should it be. The government's not good. Why has the cost of university education gone so expensive? Much more than inflation and all that sort of stuff, because the government has been insuring student loans, many of which should not be given in the first place. So that brings on two problems. Number one, if you're a student and you're not having to pay the cost right now, you don't worry about it. Hence, the universities raise their charges. Why not? Because they don't have any pushback. And number two, you have people's expectations that are too high, that shouldn't be getting these student loans, that are not a good risk to pay back these student loans, but they're insured by the government, so the insurers keep giving them to them. So everything loses. It's the same thing that we experienced with the whole real estate market and the banks. If I'm a bank and I'm trying to do the right thing and only giving productive loans, you have a bank and you're giving loans to people that want to join the American dream, as Congress said, so you're going to give loans to people that are not a good risk. Why not? Because you don't have to take the risk because the government insures it. So your shareholders are really happy. My shareholders are upset with me. Come on, Greg, get with it. We're losing all this money that other banks are doing. As a result, the government caused this entire recession. The government, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all that sort of stuff, caused this problem. Same thing with education loans. The government is causing these problems where now we have hundreds of billions of dollars in student loans that shouldn't be there. The prices are higher than they should be. Some people got loans they shouldn't have gotten, caused by the government. And the answer is no.
Yep. Good call. Yeah.
Actually, moving on, the war on drugs and the prison industrial complex. I know that's something that you're against, obviously, as we are.
Well, there's a fellow by the name of Jim Webb who was a United States Senator from Virginia. And he looked at the statistics. And the statistics were, he's now retired, but the statistics were that the United States of America has 5% of the world's population and 25% of its prisoners. And he said, taking these statistics, either we're the most evil people in the world or we're doing something wrong. Which do you think it is? And that brings us back to all of this political stuff to get tough on crime. We're mindlessly punitive. We put people in prison for ridiculously long periods of time. Now, look, if somebody is a violent offender, that's what prisons are for. And sometimes you have to remove some people from society because that's who they are. And now we can get back to these people rioting, too. You know, there's some people that just have a bent toward violence. But we have hundreds of thousands of people in prison today that simply should not be there. And a lot of it's caused by the war on drugs. A lot of it is caused by 3 strikes and you're out, mandatory minimum sentences, and all the rest of this stuff. If we were to put in a different system, okay, if you're involved in a nonviolent offense, I'm going to put you in jail for 30 days, 60 days, whatever, and then put you on strict probation. And, you know, that probation officer, if necessary, will come up, wake you up in the morning, make sure you get dressed, hold your hand, and take you to work. I mean, if that's what it comes out to at the beginning, and then about 15% of your salary off the top will go back to paying the victim for your crime. You know, so now what's going to happen? Well, look, I was the burglar and I broke this window and took this stereo set or whatever. Hey, I'm not going to do that again. This is expensive to pay this stuff back. The victim is benefited because psychologically he sees, you know, the person that caused these problems are paying him back, plus his insurance rates go down because this money will go back to the insurance company that insured him in the first place. Society sees that there's a healing process going on, and you don't have, and by the way, the taxpayers aren't going to have to pay all these hundreds of millions of dollars to keep these folks incarcerated. So reserve our prison space, as a guy named Pat Nolan said, reserve our prison space for people we're afraid of, not people we're mad at. And then things start happening for the better. Today, the prison industrial complex is enormous, and they have a lot of money. Now, a lot of people decry private prisons. You know, I think they're fine, as long as the people involved in the private sector do not have any say whatsoever in who comes there or how many people come there or how long they come there. That's a public issue. But otherwise, private prisons do a much better job in safety, in security, in education for the people involved, and in cost. So that's fine. The prison guards unions, by the way, are the largest political lobby group in my state of California, and pretty much that's true all the way around the country. Now, the private prisons have a lobby group as well. People involved in money will always have prison lobby or always have say in our political process. But we need to reduce that. We need to get so many people out of prison that are there today for no good purpose whatsoever. Then this is what we will accomplish. There are hundreds of thousands of people today in prison in the United States of America, both state and federal, that simply should not be there. And it's time to take that very seriously.
Sounds spot on to me. They actually have solutions. I like that. Most people don't.
Oh, yeah. You see the bigger picture, man.
You're like probably not aware of this, but I've written a book called A Voter's Handbook, Effective Solutions to America's Problems. And you can go to my website, judgejimgray.com, and you can get it through Amazon or whatever else. These things are not that difficult. They're just not. The whole death penalty thing is really taking advantage of the victims, taking advantage of the victims' families. I opened my newspaper today, and I saw that a man who committed an offense, a hideous offense, butchered a woman 30 years ago, killed her, etc. And he was given the death penalty. On appeal, that was overturned. So just yesterday, he was given the death penalty again. Okay, now wait a minute. The victim's family, the person that died, this family have been in limbo for 30 years, and the process is now just beginning again. You know, these poor people are entitled to closure. Give these folks, even though they're bad people, and I have my own experience with them, give them life without possibility of parole. It'll cost the taxpayers 8 times less to convict them under these things, give them their appeal, and keep them in prison the rest of their life, instead of all of this death penalty stuff, which never happens anyway. And then, fortunately, the victim's family gets closure. It's over. It's done with. This person will be in prison. No one, to my knowledge, has ever escaped from prison that was serving life without possibility of parole. That's not an issue, and be done with it. But a lot of politicians try to, for their own gratification and own political advancement, try to trump this stuff that simply flat out doesn't work. So, I mean, it's just, we bring this experience, this understanding to government. That's what Gary Johnson has. He's bringing me in. We will put in attorneys general and United States attorneys and others that understand life, and we will keep you safe, support our liberties, and stimulate our economy like we haven't seen in 100 years.
Right. Well, we've got to make it happen. I mean, it's going to be largely, like you said, a grassroots action that's going to make it happen, I think.
That's right.
From the social media and alternative media.
Right.
You
cannot underestimate the social media.
No. And especially with all these young people connecting in, like they're connecting to the system.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Well, we're doing it to them. I go to universities today and look at them and say, I've got bad news for you, but you're bankrupt. And they are. Pretty much every city in our country is bankrupt, that they have more financial obligations. They're going to have money coming in for public pensions and various other things. And we're the only game in town. You've got to bring financial responsibility back at all levels of society, including government, including certainly our cities and counties, etc. We're the only game in town.
Yep. Well, I really like that you guys know that we have to downsize, or either downsize or get rid of most of these government programs. I mean, these bureaucrats are living like leeches off of the taxpayers. It's out of hand. Most of these jobs are unnecessary.
Well, I don't know what state. I heard one of you is from Maine, but in California and any other state, we have something called Caltrans, and that is a public resource, a public group, agency. There is no reason at all for the state of California to own a dump truck. I mean, there just isn't, or an earth mover. Yes, we should have Caltrans to oversee giving out these contracts to private contractors to fix our roads, to put in our roads, but we shouldn't have the state of California being involved in this. We don't have to pay their pensions then. We'll have a contract, we'll oversee it, we'll make sure quality control, and reduce that government involvement and allow the private sector to do what it does best. It's gone beyond belief, and we've got to turn this around.
California's called California.
Well, at the moment we have a Democrat liberal governor and a two Democrat liberal senators. Fortunately, Governor Jerry Brown is a better governor now than he was the first time. He was the mayor of Oakland, and he learned financial responsibility at least a little bit there, so we're seeing something better. But we have a long way to go. Government is much too strong. It's opulent. It's too big, and the government pensions are out of sight. We really shouldn't have public pensions anymore. They don't have them anywhere, really, in the private sector. Put in your 401k programs just like other people. And it's a bit hypocritical for me because I'm a retired judge and I have a pension. And, so people say, well, come on, you're being hypocritical. Well, one way or the other, at this point, government should not have pensions. They should put into 401k programs just like private providers do, and we've got to get more control on this thing.
So, Jim, I have a serious question here. A lot of people seem to think, and I should say anarchists in general, they believe that libertarianism is just a stepping stone. We'll downsize the government, and then once we have our feet in the door, we'll completely disband the government, and then we won't have any government whatsoever. What's your take on that?
That's crazy.
Yeah, thank you.
That's simply flat out crazy.
Thank you.
I mean, the founding fathers were brilliant. They're brilliant. And if you want to look and see what federal government should be involved with, look at Article 1, Section 8. I mean, it just was flat on the money. And if you don't like it, well then, you can amend the Constitution. But there is still, shocking as this might sound, the 9th and 10th Amendments still are in the Bill of Rights. They're still in the Constitution. And what did it say? Again, brilliantly. Okay, we have delegated certain rights, we the people, have delegated certain rights to the government, certain powers, and that is to put in a military. Look at Article 1, Section 8. Put in a military, actually put in a post office, which I might dispute, but put in post roads, put in a judiciary. That's sort of currency. Well, I might dispute that as well, but it's there. In the meantime, any power that we hereby do not delegate in Article 1, Section 8 to the federal government stays with who? The people and the states. And that's where we should be. No, if somebody were to take a gun and rob a local mini-mart, I'm not saying that's not important. I'm not saying that's not serious, but it's not a federal issue. It's a state issue. The states are able to address serious issues. The states are able to decide whether they want to have marijuana prohibition or drug prohibition or not. As Gary Johnson says, we have 50 crucibles of democracy, all out there able to try different things. And if some of them work, we will find enormous success stories that can be copied and emulated. And yes, we'll find some occasional failures that can then be avoided. But as I ask in our Kiwanis clubs and Rotary clubs when I go out talking, how many people here feel that the federal government has all the answers? I get chuckles, but I never get any hands raised. So let's allow the states of New Hampshire or Nebraska or North Carolina to come out with a drug policy. And they are fully able to decide how best to serve and protect their people. Maybe they'll be good in some and not good in others. We can learn from each other's experience. So
sure.
But no one is proposing to do away with, to do away with the federal government. The answer is no, of course not. But let's go back to what the founding fathers said. They were brilliant. So one way or the other, they put it together, and we should learn again from their teachings.
That was like the best answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, seriously. That felt good.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, a more reasonable solution.
Oh man, I'm glad that was the answer because a lot of people are under this impression that libertarianism is the same as anarchism, zero government, and which is completely delusional.
We libertarians have made a big mistake, and that is we've allowed other people to define us. And we have that problem in the campaign, and there are people out there, but we tell folks, look, we are classic liberals. We are classic. When it comes time to our liberties, I am a flaming liberal. And that's a direct quote from Gary Johnson. When it comes to looking at whether the government should look at our bank accounts without a search warrant, without a warrant based on probable cause signed by a judge, or looking at our phone records, or looking at our email accounts, or surveilling us, with drones overhead, or whatever, I am a flaming liberal, and the answer is no. People do not realize that we libertarians are classic liberals. We're also classic conservatives. We really do believe in financial responsibility at all levels of society. Look, I was a federal prosecutor before I was done, I was in charge of a unit to prosecute frauds against the government, against the FHA, the VA, etc. I prosecuted a lot of bank vice presidents. I believe in responsibility at all levels of society, and that starts with government. It starts with me. It starts with Gary Johnson, and it works all the way down. So at all levels, people should be responsible for what they do. Not what they put into their bodies, by the way. That is none of the government's business, but what their actions are. And that's what the criminal justice system is good at. That's what we stand for. Yes, libertarians stand for freedom and liberties. But that means, as all libertarians know, it goes hand in hand with taking responsibility for your actions. That's what we need to get out there to the world. So I'm proud to be a libertarian. I will be the rest of my life, but we have allowed others to define us, and you, particularly in the social media, can do better at getting this word out that, no, we believe in responsibility and as well as our freedoms.
Very cool. So do you have any thoughts on this cryptocurrency, this whole blockchain, Bitcoin technology?
Well, I believe in Krugerrands. There is no reason why, in a lot of ways, the government should be involved with currency.
Yes.
Look. When I was in college, I graduated from UCLA in 1966. I could buy 3 gallons of gasoline for $1. That's what the cost was. I can still today, 2014, buy 3 gallons of gasoline for $1, as long as it's a silver dollar. So the cost of gasoline has not increased. It's inflation. It's government being involved in the economy that's caused these problems. So if you come back to a Bitcoin, or as I say, Krugerrands, where you have a currency getting off the gold standard. I mean, Richard Nixon got us off the gold. What a mistake. Yep. Just a huge mistake. He also caused the war on drugs to ratchet it up again. Another enormous mistake. Put us on wage and price controls. That's, by the way, what got us involved in having companies having to buy health insurance for people. I mean, they really shouldn't have to. It's none of the company's business. All of that sort of stuff. So anytime the government keeps tinkering in the marketplace, it causes problems. Ask FDR. That set us on the road for being hugely involved in depressions, recessions, inflation, all the rest of this. That's not to say that the free market is perfect. We do need regulations. We do need to have antitrust laws, in my view, and have some form of regulations, and certainly truth in advertising and enforcement of warranties, that sort of thing. But the government getting involved in all of this stuff has caused enormous problems. Get back to the gold standard, and you'll be able to thrive.
Yep.
Well,
I particularly like this Bitcoin because it's a way to. It's another form of competition against the Federal Reserve. Yeah.
Sure.
At the moment,
and they're scared of it.
Yeah.
They're scared of it. As I sit here, I still don't understand Bitcoin. I really don't know what's backing it up. But as long as people think it does.
The only people who could originally accumulate coins were the actual miners, all the hackers and nerds at the computers, and you couldn't have the government doing that at first, so it's kind of like a safety net that way. But it's still only a $3 billion market, so I and a lot of other people who are trading in Bitcoin do have this fear that the government, through the Federal Reserve or whatever, is slowly accumulating coins to try to gain control and take it over.
Yeah, I understand the concept, and I approve of the concept. I'm not a techie, and I couldn't sit down and explain to you why Bitcoins work. But bless you.
I just hope it. I hope it stays strong and doesn't get regulated. I think once the government gets involved in regulation, that's when it's lost.
Well, I think I've made plain my view on that, at least.
Yeah. A lot of people fear that, it needs to be regulated. A lot of Bitcoin people actually want it to be regulated because they want people to trust it. They don't want another Mt. Gox exchange from shutting down, and, a lot of people
lose all their money in Bitcoin.
Well, I know what Ponzi schemes are, and I'm afraid of them.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. I get that, but I still think it's like, you got your pros and cons, and the pros outweigh the cons. I think that we do need to take on the risk and keep it unregulated, just for that simple fact that I just don't trust the Fed at all. You know, they're going to corrupt it.
You sure convinced me.
Yeah, they are going to corrupt it. I don't. Good. So yeah. Wow, the future. Yeah, that whole blockchain is so promising. I'm just not 100% sure if Bitcoin is going to be the answer. The blockchain is, though. That's a great technology. It could definitely revolutionize money. But wow. Chris, Michael, any more questions? I'm tapped.
Yeah, we're almost to the end of the show anyway. We only got 8 more minutes. So I guess we're running out of time anyway. But
Judge, what is your? Can you say what your website is again for the viewers?
Well, yes. First of all, ouramericainitiative.org, and that is where Governor Johnson and I are standing up for liberty and trying to get the word out to people in universities and the younger people, because we stand for them. My website is judgejimgray.com, and if people would like to contact me, they can do it through my website. Gray is Gray, so it's judgejimgray.com, and you can contact me, and I respond to you. Be patient. I get a lot of emails, but I will respond. And if you're interested, I wrote this book, Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed and What We Can Do About It, a judicial indictment of the war on drugs. And I'm proud of it. There's a second edition out from 2012 where it was endorsed. And talk about a hero of mine is Milton Friedman, and he endorsed my book. I thought if he'd even read something I write was something beyond my imagination, but he endorsed it. George Shultz, Secretary of State under Reagan, endorsed it. Walter Cronkite endorsed it. Gary Johnson, while he was governor of New Mexico, endorsed it. So I'm real proud of that, and it is a statement that people are using. They're using it in universities and just to push a discussion, an open and honest discussion on this biggest failure in public policy in the United States of America, which is drug prohibition. The biggest failure is second only to slavery. So I'm trying to use that. I've written actually a book on judging called Wearing the Robe, and if people are interested in becoming a judge or what a judge does, it's available through Amazon.com, and I'm proud of that as well. And finally, I've had some time on my hands. I've written a musical called Americans All, which talks about, it's meant for high school kids to focus on making good decisions. You're responsible for the decisions you make. Whether drugs are legal or illegal is irrelevant as far as your body is concerned. You treat your body well, it'll treat you well, and if you treat it poorly, whether drugs are legal or illegal, it'll treat you accordingly. So you're responsible for the decisions you make. Stay in school. Enjoy your life when you have it. We're here for a short time. Just try to maximize the gratification that you can from living in the greatest country that the world has ever seen, and I believe that. And yes, we've made our mistakes, and yes, we could do better, but it still is a great country. It has enormous promise. It's fulfilled that promise in numbers of different ways. I am blessed to be able to be a citizen of the United States of America. I was in the Peace Corps. I think I'm still in the Peace Corps. We can help other people, not because we have to, not because the government decrees it, but because we as a people want to. That's who we are. And when it comes down to it, the best thing a person can do is take responsibility for his or her own actions. And the second group that's responsible for you is your family. And then get the government out of the way, allow private foundations, religious organizations to step forward, because every time the government steps forward with various supposed remedies, the private institutions take a step back. But when it comes down to it, the government is the last resort instead of the first resort. But no one is going to starve to death. No one is going to bleed to death in the streets if a libertarian is in office, not because we have to, because we don't, but because we want to, because that's the people we are. So I have evolved into being a libertarian. I was a lifelong Republican until the passage of the so-called Patriot Act, which absolutely did me in. You know, this is a direct, fundamental attack on our civil liberties, and that is the soul of our country. And if you think about it, people around the world still love America, and they still love Americans. They may not be all that excited about our government, and then again, neither am I a lot of the times, but they really love America. Why? Why do they care about America? What sets us apart? And the answer is the very soul of our country is our freedoms and our liberties. And today our very soul is under attack by our very own government. And Ronald Reagan, who had his own problems in a lot of ways, but was right in saying that we simply must be vigilant about protecting our liberties. And we're not. And we're giving it away in this so-called war on terrorism, and you can come back to Ben Franklin, who I really appreciated, who said any society that tries to give away some of its liberties to get a little extra freedom, get a little extra security, deserves neither. And that's the position we're in today with regard to this so-called war on terrorism. You cannot declare war against an idea. You cannot declare war against some renegades who are out there that are loosely gathered together, and give up our liberties, because when we give up our liberties, they win. Osama bin Laden is winning every time we give up our liberties on our Fourth Amendment and our First Amendment and the rest of this sort of stuff. We become like them. So we have to be adult, we have to be sophisticated, we have to stand up with resolve and support our liberties, which make us free, which make us special.